The first item is the assignment for request for council action. For the Finance Committee, we have 2145 grant application, 2021 tech grant for the Muni Court, 2146 contract administrator for fiscal year 20 chip grant ORDC, 2047 amend salaries and benefits code 3114 sick leave, 2148 amend salaries and benefits code 3105 pay adjustment for building official, 2149 amend ordinance 15720 parking deck detention system estimate, 2150 bids for the 2021 contract concrete street repair job number 1088, 2151 final resolution and certificate State Route 18 improvement project, 2152 contract with ODOT State Route 18 corridor improvement project, 2153 grant application CDBG CV targets of opportunity grant, 2154 special event vendor fees MCRC, 2155 program and activity rate change proposal for the MCRC, 2156 request to amend 2021 civil service budget. Item 2 is 21045 grant application for 2021 tech grant municipal court. Cindy?
Hi, good evening, thank you. We're just requesting the council to go ahead, we can go ahead and apply and receive if the Supreme Court awards us this technology grant. It's for one project would be for e-filing for the case management system, and the second project would be for new security cameras.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 21046, contract for administration services with ORDC fiscal year 20 CHIP grant. Mr. Mendel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is to execute a grant with ORDC, who is our consultant for administration of our CHIP program. So this is for the new CHIP program that has started at the end of last year and has been progressing, PY20 CHIP grant. These numbers that they'd be paying for administration and then soft costs are all consistent with the what we paid them in past CHIP grants as well. So it's not too different from previous cycles. So I would recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rose?
I'd like an acronym check. What does ODSA mean? For the
Ohio
grant?
Department of,
Administrative Services.
yes, thank you.
Good question.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 21047, amending salaries and benefits code section 3114, sick leave. Mayor Howell? Is this you? Or is this?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm just catching up. So as you can see from the RCA, this was prepared by the Finance Department. The accrual of sick time when somebody retires has been interpreted differently over the years. And previously, if they had 10 or more years of service and decided to leave the city employ, they were allowed to cash out up to 37.5% of their unused sick time. And but what the current wording says is a retirement. And the question came up when somebody left and wasn't really of age to retire, but had been here for well beyond 10 years. And the past practice that has been going on is what the proposed wording is, but just so that the Finance Department doesn't end up with a problem with the auditors at some point as to, you know, why is this happening if it's not legislated in some fashion. They're asking that the council simply amend the language so that with 2 weeks' notice at the time of retirement with 10 or more years of full-time service with the city, they would be eligible to cash in the maximum or up to the maximum 37.5% of accrued sick time. There are other times when somebody, maybe they're leaving the city, but they're going somewhere else, or in the future, they go somewhere else. If they don't cash out that sick time, they can then transfer that sick time from city to city. But if they cash it out, even though it's 37.5%, then it's all gone. It's not like they can say, well, I want to take the other, 62.5% and now transfer that. It's either all of one, or you save it, and if you go somewhere else in public employee, then you can transfer it.
Just a quick question for Mr. Huber. This says a city employee providing 2-week notification. What if they're fired and then give you a 2-week notification? That still counts, I think. Because all it says is you got to provide a 2-week notification. And I'm just concerned with if they're fired for cause or something like that. So for example, I was fired, I would just give you a 2-week notification and I can get are you still able to get your sick time if you're fired? I guess that's the question.
Well, typically, to my knowledge, that has not been the case. If you're fired, you're usually done as the date of your firing, and there isn't any time for a 2-week notification.
Well, I mean, it doesn't say you have to wait 2 weeks. It just says you have to provide a 2-week notification. Doesn't mean it has to be effective, I guess. That's the way I read it. And I guess maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but I just don't want something to come up where you can slip around and get the sick time if you're still, something happens and you're
Well, I
fired.
suppose in as much as we're altering the language, we could add a sentence that advises specifically that this does not apply if you're fired with
Okay.
cause.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to,
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Huber. It was never intended that, the point of the 2-week notification is that, we can try to get things in order. If we need to do some interviews, get somebody in, that we're not stuck there, that they come in one afternoon and say, I'm out of here, because that's not really fair either. And,
well, I mean, that's, I guess, the question, because it just says providing 2-week notification. Doesn't mean you have to stay to 2 weeks. All you got to do is provide that notification.
no, I think what the recommendation is they give when we say a 2-week notice, they're going to stay for 2 weeks.
Maybe we should say, qualify that, you're not terminated and an employee providing 2 week and remains for the 2 weeks. Because I mean, I guess my job is to just look at that and see how I can get around it.
Okay, if it's okay with the council, if you're okay with the concept, Mr. Huber and I can work on the language and bring it back to council.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea to clarify the whole point about,
Yes, sir.
giving a notification and getting your 37.5%.
Right,
That's a good idea.
yes, sir.
And I think the other thing about that too, John, is I do like the ability sometimes when you're not positive, you can get the termination, but you could get the resignation by saying, if you resign, you'll be able to get your severance or your sick leave paid out. That gives you a little flexibility sometime in those tough situations with termination. I guess I'd think about that too with, you don't want to completely,
No, I get it, but I just don't want, because the way I read this, all I got to do is if something happened, just give a notification. I can leave tomorrow and still get the sick time, because it doesn't say I have to stay. It just says I have to.
Okay, yeah, we'll clear that up. Now, the other thing I'll share with council, because we deal with it, you all may not have ever seen this section before, but there's also a maximum amount of hours. So even if 37.5% equals X, the maximum is, off the top of my head, 400 hours, right? So it's not like somebody has 2,000 hours. They're not going to get 37.5%. They only get the 400 hours then.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion will be as approved by the law director.
move to approve subject to.
I have a question,
Oh.
Mr. President,
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
For once, I was too quiet. So I'm going to make sure that I understand what we're doing. I'm going to break it down. So if you were fired, you don't get that 37.5%, correct?
Right, my understanding is you wouldn't get it fired or resigning and leaving that day, because that is not a 2-week notice in my mind.
But
Yeah,
if
we just got to
you-
clarify that language. That's what
But
we-
if you quit with 2 weeks' notice, and you've been there 15 years, and you're not retiring, you're just quitting because, I don't know, you
It's
won the
just an
lottery,
example.
you still get that 37.5, correct?
Correct, as long as you give the 2-week notice,
Okay, and you work out the 2-week notice?
correct.
Okay.
And we'll work on the language for that.
Okay, so I'll make a motion, subject to final language being worked out by the mayor and the law director.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2148, amend salaries and benefits code 3105, pay adjustment for the building official. Mr. Mendel?
Yes, thank you. This is a request to increase the pay for our building official, Dan Gladish. As you see in the RCA, he's currently at a pay grade 113, and he's at the max of the 113. So we would like to increase it to 114, which then takes it up to a pay of about $109,500, basically, which is a 5% increase. Justification, not only being a great employee and an asset to the community, he's also one of the handful of building officials in the state of Ohio that has gotten a lot of certifications and allow for plan review particularly. That's a very important one because there's costs related to plan review right now where we have a third-party plan reviewer and they charge basically us the max that is in our ordinance that we're allowed to charge per the Ohio Building Code. With our current building official, Dan Gladish, can do a lot of that now. His pay rate is less than the maximum, but that's still charged to the applicant, to the permit applicant. So there's revenue coming into it, and plus Dan has been an asset not only for the community development department and the building division, but he's been a great asset for pretty much all the allied disciplines within the city of Medina. So I would just recommend that. And then in terms of funds, the building department for this budget year has sufficient funds in carry forward to be able to move into that for the remainder of this year. And then obviously we would, if this was approved by council, budget it into the 22 budget cycle as well. So I would just recommend approval. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Thank you. Mayor?
So I don't think Dan's here, right? So Dan spent about 2 years on this certification, which is very helpful to the city. It's actually a revenue generator. If you look at the attachment to the RCA, that it could potentially generate up to $38,000 a year, and the raise is a little over 5. The other thing I'll share, and I think all of you have your own experience with Dan or other people that have experienced Dan, but since we brought him over and he took over the plumbing instead of the health department doing the plumbing, we've had 0 complaints with restaurants opening up in the city, whereas before every restaurant we opened had complaints. Dan, a number of times in the last 3 to 5 years, as the Cleveland Clinic has done projects, they've needed them to come in at 2 or 3 in the morning to inspect something, to keep the project on track and keep it moving, or come in on a Saturday morning. And it doesn't matter what the request is, Dan accommodates all of those. I spoke with Dan about this. I spoke with Jonathan about it, and I couldn't more wholeheartedly agree that this is fair and reasonable for the work product that we're getting from our building official, and I'd respectfully ask for your approval.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. President?
Mr. Rose?
Thank you. What step would he be starting at 114?
I believe he would be,
It's just a number, sir. So it's going to increase into that next pay grade. It's not really in steps. We pick the number, and then from there forward, if the employees get 2% or 1.5% or 2.5%, that number will then just escalate with the cost of living, just like all the other employees.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just so everybody's aware, kind of the when we normally do anything with pay, we look at surrounding communities. And, they may or may not have the same certifications, most likely not. But like Independence, their building official makes $96,800. Strongsville building official makes $118,893. Avon Lake's $93,000. City of Avon's $103,000. Shaker Heights is $93,000. Brunswick is $80,000, and Wadsworth is $65,000. So in the county, he'll be at the top, with the certifications. Now, I don't believe Brunswick and Wadsworth have the same certifications, of course. But that kind of gives you a feel for, in Northeast Ohio, where he stands as far as with his certifications and what other building officials and other communities are making. So,
I'm in agreement with this. He deserves it. He's earned it.
any questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
21049, amending ordinance 15720, parking deck detention system. Patrick?
Thank you. We bid this project, open bids on January 29th, received 4 bids. None of them were anywhere close to our estimate. I also talked to several more contractors that picked up plans that did not submit a bid, and they confirmed, and these are people we kind of trust, that we were just, that our budget was way underestimated for this. The 2 things they pointed out was the cost of the detention system itself. This is the first one we've done, and apparently we aimed low, and the depth of excavation, it's a very deep system, so those contributed to the additional cost. So we're asking to amend the previous ordinance, and the new revised estimate is $204,000.
Now, this cost would be, any cost that the city expends, of course, will be rolled into the TIF, I take it, and that's how it'll be reimbursed?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to look at that because a part of this is going to benefit the parking deck, which is involved with the TIF.
Correct.
The other part is going to benefit
Right.
the development, and, which is a TIF project, so the
Right.
fact that it's on TIF property.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you
could
could do the whole, or you could do a portion of it, because the fact that it's bigger, I don't know if it matters. It still needed to be done for the project that's happening.
Yes.
On the property.
It's the
so
same amount of work. I
it
think
might-
the
yes.
difference between adding the 2 together is the volume of water it
That's
needs
it,
to
right,
retain.
right.
Yes, sir.
So hopefully we can do that. I think we should be able to, possibility to get some of that cost back. And did you say this will be done after, during, or prior to again?
We'd like to do it prior to the Liberty View project. Reason being, I mentioned the deep excavation. That material that's excavated has got to be stockpiled somewhere, really for only a short period of time, a week or 2. But we estimate that it'll take up most of the area of that parking lot.
Oh,
It's that much material.
so you're going to do that, so you're thinking before May then, or something?
Right, and that's kind of why we're asking for the emergency clause as well.
The other thing, Mr. Coyne, if I
Yes.
may, is there's some apprehension on behalf of the Rose Company with completing the concrete and the sidewalk because of the cranes and the equipment and everything else. So our plan is to try to get the water retention or detention basin in place and then compact stone on top and use it as a temporary drive until the Rose project is completed, and then redo the concrete then versus put it in and take a
Right.
risk of damaging it. I just don't want anybody to be surprised that we get so far along and then we don't complete it.
Right.
That's the reasoning.
Questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2150, bids for the 2021 concrete street repair. Patrick?
Thank you. This is our annual program. We're asking for $500,000, the same as we did last year. This replaces concrete slabs in various parts of the city, all over the city.
Questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2151, final resolution and fiscal officer certificate for the State Route 18 project. Patrick?
Thank you. This one and the next one are both related. We just received these from ODOT, and it has to do with, as mentioned, the Route 18 project. Council last year, I believe, Resolution 10620 passed the preliminary legislation is what they call it. This is the final legislation, and it includes a fiscal officer certificate. At the time in the preliminary legislation, they estimated our share of the cost of the project is $140,200. Bids came in, it was awarded to Fetchco Excavating, and our cost is reduced to $70,210. ODOT would like to get payment immediately. Typically, they send these
final legislation's out well before the bid, and for whatever reason on their end, they didn't do that. So that's the reason we're asking for the emergency clause.
Any questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
The second includes the emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2152, then a State Road 18 improvement project contract with ODOT. This is the same thing related to the payment we just approved, correct?
Yeah, this is the same project. This is actually a contract between the city and ODOT where we are committed to paying them $70,210, and they'll complete the improvements, the city improvements.
Any questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second includes the emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2153, grant application for CDBG CV Targets of Opportunity Grant. Mr. Mendel?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a target of opportunity grant, so it's not an ongoing kind of typical one that we usually do, like allocation or CHIP. This is a new program that was created through money that the state of Ohio received in one of the, I believe, the 2020 CARES Act funding that came from the federal government to the states. So this money was arrived, and they did it for, they wanted to target it to facilities in a community to help mitigate COVID restrictions, to help accommodate those. So we got applications from, or suggestions from many different entities in the community, but ended up with the one that's in the RCA. It's a pretty big project. They actually have funding to do parts of their project, but this is kind of a gap financing or gap funding through this grant to help with critical parts of HVAC within the building. So as this is an important community resource, we respectfully ask to apply for and accept, if granted, if approved, accept this grant. We are also looking to contract with ORDC, who is our consultant that manages the administration of our CHIP program, to administer this specific project and grant as well. So the emergency clause is requested as the project has begun with other sources, so this portion of the project kind of needs to fit into their construction management timing for the project, so we would ask for the emergency clause for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
My second includes the emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2154, special event vendor fees for the MCRC. Christie? Is this you or is this Jansen? Who is it?
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
Thank you. So as you know, we're experiencing a lot of different challenges at the Recreation Center. And we've made a lot of changes recently to try and reach different segments of the community and connect them back to the rec center. And one of the items that we wanted to revisit that we discussed, you might recall back in 2019, was the implementation of vendor fees and sponsorships to help offset the cost of events. Part of our marketing strategy is to have events to either showcase the recreation center or have events in the parks utilizing rec center staff to connect to the residents in our community and surrounding that might use the recreation center. We want to rebuild our image and make the rec center fun again. The family memberships in the last 10 years have basically steadily declined, and we see that as a huge opportunity. That is our most expensive membership. So we would like to do things to engage children in the community and connect with their families so that when they think of the rec center, they think of something fun, and then mom and dad want to join as well. What our goal is to implement vendor fees and sponsorship fees, like I previously mentioned, to help offset some of these costs so that hopefully with this opportunity, we can make a good majority of these events free for the community. We included an example with the request to kind of give you an idea of where we're at right now. We have an Easter egg hunt scheduled for Memorial Park on April 3rd. If we are doing that event right now. If we get individuals to register for that event, we're still $120 in the red, and that's with them paying. We know that there's opportunities out there. We know that we can connect with businesses in the community. This isn't an idea that's new. A lot of these events, Fireworks Festival, Halloween Harvest Festival, these are all things that we've done in the past that due to budget cuts and so on and so forth, we no longer were able to offer. So we're not reinventing the wheel. What we want to do is establish a rate structure so that we can justify the time and effort that goes into it to cover our costs, and hopefully the plan aligns, and that enables us to connect with those in the community and in turn use our programs and events to drive memberships. Like I said, we see it as a good opportunity. We did discuss this with Mr. Huber, and I believe this is, we just want this to be a discussion item for right now, because I think we're working on drafting some language to incorporate it into the next request that's on the agenda. So this fee would be then incorporated into our ordinance that we already have for program and activity rates. So as of right now, it's just a discussion item until we get that language firmed up so that we're ready to move forward. One of the things I did want to mention, I know I'm getting a little long-winded, from the few events that we have out there right now, we've already discovered that this philosophy is working. We have a Nerf night scheduled. It's completely full. All 20 people registered for it are non-members at the rec center. We have the Easter egg hunt that we currently have on the schedule. 29 of the 30 people registered are non-members. And the art classes that we have that just started a week or so ago, 19 of the 20 people registered are non-members. So we're seeing the results of kind of what we thought, and hoping that we can move forward.
Mr. President,
Mayor?
if I could. So it's brought to my attention by Christie and Jansen that we had been charging fees previously, and it was caught in an audit. There was no enabling legislation to do it. So they quit charging fees as a result of that, because we don't want to do anything that's not proper with the audit. So we're working our way through this to legitimize what has, again, been the past practice and get the enabling legislation to let us do that. So I thought that was important for the council to know that we're trying to make it right.
Thanks. Discussion? Okay, move that. Did you already discuss the next one, or you want to roll into that one? Okay.
We can go into the next one if there's no questions.
And this is a discussion item too, I take it then?
Yeah, that's my understanding what we wanted to do, Mr. Huber, is that correct?
Okay.
The program and activity rate change proposal, there's a lot of cleanup in that request. The point behind the request to increase the maximum allowable fees is right now with coronavirus and having classes, we're limited with the numbers that we can have in those classes. The problem is the instructor fees and costs to the rec center don't change. So we're respectfully asking that we increase the maximum allowable. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to charge, but if we have to, for it to make sense business-wise, we have the ability to do that. We also are cleaning up a lot of the specific specialized portions of that rate, because a lot of the fees that are in there we don't use because they are so specific. So a couple of the big changes that I just wanted to point out are for private lessons and semi-private lessons. That is a new fee that we're requesting be implemented. The other major change is the increase in cost for specialized instruction. What we mean by specialized instruction, we included an example of a new program we're looking to bring to the rec center for stand-up paddleboard fitness. There's a lot of overhead costs with that, with equipment. So we want to have the ability to charge the necessary rate to cover the expense that we have through an independent contractor agreement. Any questions about that?
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Jensen, what sort of event would you be able to charge the maximum rate? You go down the line and that event checks off every box. What would that be?
So it all depends on the exposure and the number of people we would reach. So when thinking about the maximum rate, a perfect example would be the fireworks festival. It's going to be a lot of people coming. You're going to get high exposure. So if we have, say we bring in a concession vendor that has 5 or 6 trailers, we could charge either by the square footage and where they're located. It just depends on the exposure. And a lot of that, I should have mentioned in the earlier, what we want to try and establish is set up a event committee at the rec center so we can talk about all of these and have a good reasoning for the cost, as well as take it to the rec advisory committee because the city would essentially be keeping 100% of the profits that's generated from it per the JOA. So get their blessing on it, and then also, in addition to that, take it to the Board of Control to explain it to that committee. So it's not just Christie or myself deciding on these numbers.
So there'll be some sort of criteria established.
Yes, sir.
So somebody can't say, well, you charged him and not him. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. President?
Mrs. Hazeltine?
My question is, you keep talking about the max fee. So does the max fee vary depending on the event? Or do you have a flat max fee that you can charge for any event?
The maximum fees that are in the program proposal are for specific classes that we would have in our brochures. So we aren't charging those yet. We foresee changing the prices in the future if we need to.
Okay,
Right now, we're not changing any prices of any current classes.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, we'll wait till that finalized and see what the legal language provides.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The last item on the agenda is 21056, amending the 2021 civil service budget. Lorraine?
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm here, but right now in my contractual line, I have $5,250. And we're doing, we all know we just hired the fire chief, and that was $12,080, $280, but that was from last year's budget. Now we're going to have to fill a captain spot and a lieutenant spot. The captain, we found out that it's going to be $1,800 per candidate testing, which comes to $9,000 right there. And then the fire lieutenants, we usually do a written exam, and that one's usually roughly about $2,000, but that too depends on how many people participate. And then our police and our dispatch eligibility lists are going to be expiring towards the end of the year. So I don't know if we'll be using those, but I'm asking for $13,500. I know.
I'll just cut you a check, no big deal.
Okay.
That's nice. No, I guess I understand. Hopefully, though, I guess it all depends on how many people apply. I mean, we have no idea
Right.
Exactly how many people are going to apply for those various positions, but, I understand.
Mr. Coyne?
Mayor?
So on behalf of Lorraine, this is kind of an unprecedented year for us, because we promoted from within, which I feel is the right thing to do. What that does then is cause kind of a cascading effect with these others. So now to be eligible for the captain, it goes to the lieutenants. One of the lieutenants moves up. Now we have to test for the lieutenant. But still, it's in many of these staff members' careers, it may be the only opportunity they have for this promotional opportunity. The other thing is, you know, for these command level positions, I mean, $12,280 is a lot, but for a fire chief who we put the faith and trust of running that department is, I don't think you can put a number on something like that. So Lorraine's done a great job. I will share with the council, just on her behalf, that a lot of the testing has had to change with the COVID protocols too. So if she has a group of 30 that want to take a test, because she can only put 10 in a room, now she has to give 3 tests. And that's 3 times that she has to be here, 3 times she has to get the room set up and cleaned up, and, you know, on and on it goes. Now that, because it's just, she's a salary position, that does not reflect necessarily in the budget, but there's been a lot of adjustments and a lot of demands, and she's done an excellent job with it. And I'd respectfully ask that the council authorize the additional expenditure, and my hope and prayer is in the next several years, we'll see the budget come back down in the normal range.
Any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rose?
is there any chance we can get any CARES money to cover this? Or is that ship sailed?
Under this new federal proposal that's coming down, we're not quite sure what all the guidelines are, but some of these things that are not necessarily COVID related, I mean, filling the different vacancies as they occur. I don't know that we can tie as much to COVID. As far as reimbursing some of the salaries and creating a carry forward opportunity for Lorraine is a possibility, because otherwise we wouldn't be given 3 or 4 tests, we'd be given 1 test.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think-
my point. At
Yes,
least
sir.
cover the additional tests.
Yes, I think under that, we could do that. That would not necessarily go into the contractual service, but it would create carry forward that we could later transfer in the future. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before finance before we recess into executive session? Mayor?
I will just mention, because I'm not going to be here for the March 22nd meeting, and I'm not sure if it'll be ready or not. Jansen's going to handle it in the interim. If not, I'll pick it back up when I get back. But Spokes Cafe is interested in renewing their contract. They had a 5-year contract that renewed to a second 5-year contract, and it's up in 23, or it terminates in 23, and they'd like to continue for another 2 sets of 5 years. So we, Jansen and I, Mr. Huber, I believe, are satisfied with the contract. They're not looking at changing the contract, just trying to extend it so they can continue to perform the services. Everything I've heard, excuse me, from the operations there is it's very positive. So I just wanted council to know that if this comes to finance on March 22nd, that I'm fully in support of renewing the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Okay, I will make a motion at 6:39 PM to go into executive session for the purpose of a conference with the law director regarding issues of a legal matter that are pending or imminent, to include the mayor and the law director.
Anybody else? Okay. Second?
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lamb,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Shields,
Yes.
Coin,
Yes.
Heffinger,
Yes.
Hazeltine.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We'll be recessing to executive session to discuss the imminent litigation, coming out of executive session back into finance, taking no action of any item discussed in the executive session, and then adjourning from finance. We are in recess.